Stanford has made the decision to fire head coach Troy Taylor, making that move today. This all comes on the heels of the ESPN report into bullying and belittling of Stanford staff members, most of whom were female, and the accusation that Taylor tried to remove an NCAA compliance officer, which you can't do, even with the NCAA not having nearly the same level of talent. The timing was really interesting, by the way, because the report came out a week ago. The investigation was a while ago. ESPN reported that Taylor had lost the locker room. I don't know if it's because Stanford didn't want to drastically upheave things right now, or they got additional information, or what. But of note, Andrew Luck has a tremendous amount of influence into this team now, this program. He is Stanford Football's GM. He's going to run this search. AD Bernard Muir, who has been really bad, has already stepped down. He's announced he's going to resign. Andrew Luck made the decision to part ways with Troy Taylor. And that is significant because it's change. You know, in the past, athletic directors made the head coaching search hires. Now, this is the first example of the football GM in the new NIL era kind of making the decisions when it comes to a football team and being above the head coach in the pecking order. Now, unfortunately, the timing sucks for Stanford. There's no way around it. It's not good timing. Spring practices are underway. I don't know if the Cardinal are going to be able to get a head coach to take over full time. This might be a situation where there's an interim coach for the rest of the season to get through the year, and then they hire somebody else to take on full time next kind of regular off season. So keep that in mind as we go through this list. There'll kind of be some cheating involving both, frankly. So predictions. Will Stanford just hire the interim for the 2025 season? Y for yes, N for no. Let me know in the comments section of today's show. First up is Andy Thompson. That is the Stanford defensive coordinator. I will make note, he is actually a co-DC as well. Bobby April has the DC. Typically, they call it the Willie Shaw DC, which is also funny that it's the Andrew Luck director of offense when he's the football GM, which is kind of funny timing. So I think either of those guys make a ton of sense as the interim candidate. Thompson was the head coach at Sac State. It was bad, so it wouldn't be a really great long-term hire, but just to survive the season, promoting somebody, I think, makes plenty of sense. Number 9, Jason Garrett, the former head coach of the Cowboys. He was a contender for the Duke head coaching job, and I think this type of program actually does fit for him. You know, he's a Princeton guy. He's had interest in the past. He also hasn't been a head coach since 2019 with the Dallas Cowboys, and it wasn't that great. I know he was the Giants OC last, but people know him as the Cowboys head coach. This actually might work, but I think there's also a lot of downside involved too. Like, he hasn't recruited. Would he be good at it? I think so, but it's different now. It's a dark horse fun idea. Who should Stanford Football hire as their next head coach? It's the pinned comment on today's show, so if the ad comes here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. Number 8, Troy Calhoun, the head coach over at Air Force. He has been linked to jobs in the past. He didn't make a bowl game this past year for Air Force. And we've seen in some recent years, some coaches kind of jump ship a year early of like, I might get fired next year. Bye. And takes even sometimes a lesser job. This would be an upgrade. But he's been pretty productive at Air Force. He's got some West Coast-ish ties. It's not quite the West Coast, but it's western half of the U.S., I guess. I think as a G5 coach, this does intrigue me a little bit. A lot of names on this list have ties to Stanford. Troy Walters is one of them. He has been the long-term Bengals wide receivers coach. He's held that role since 2021. He has collegiate coaching experience, was the Nebraska OC for a few years, UCF wide receivers coach, Colorado wide receivers coach, and was a Stanford wide receiver back in 2000. So if you want a longer-term option, you'd probably take the job right now. Walters could be a fit. Number 6 is Jeff Monken, the head coach over at Army. Again, some of these names are probably guys you could convince to come on over after this upcoming season. I don't know if you're going to have a massive trickle-down effect here. He was at Georgia Southern before they made the jump to the FBS, by the way. 4 years, did a great job, and has won an Army, which, make no mistake, is not an easy place to win. And for Stanford, with question marks, with the academic requirements you have, with some of the not great NIL and even facility supporting, and playing in the ACC as a West Coast team, I don't think it's an easy place to win at right now. Hiring someone who has wanted a hard place to win, I think makes a lot of sense. Today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. It is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 10 or 100 or up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. It's available in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. They've also got the Flex Play. So if you want to do some season-long baseball Prize Pick slates or college basketball with March now here, you can get in on the action with Prize Picks. Go download the app today over at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. Link again is in the comments section and the description of today's show. The top 5, I'm kind of super intrigued by. I think you could rank them in any order, frankly. How about Tavita Pritchard? That is the former Stanford quarterback who was replaced and surpassed by Andrew Luck, who had spent a decade plus coaching at Stanford, including being their offensive coordinator, and is now the Commanders' quarterbacks coach. This is a fun, not the most household name, but he'd take the job. I promise you that. Go back to his alma mater, be the head coach, save the team. It's a question of if he's ready for it or not. Number 4, there's a lot of Stanford ties here, guys, right? How about Greg Roman, the Chargers offensive coordinator? I think his overall coaching philosophy could still work in the collegiate ranks. He was the Stanford associate head coach from 2009 to 2010, and then was on the Harbaugh path. Jim and John, with the Niners as the OC, briefly the Bills OC. Ravens tight end coach before becoming the OC there, is now the Chargers offensive coordinator. The timing, again, would kind of put LA in a bad spot. I don't know if he'd do that to Jim. That's, I think, kind of the biggest issue with Roman. Plus, does Stanford want him back? I mentioned earlier, Stanford, it's not an easy job. It's a household name to an extent, but it's not an easy place to win. It's kind of, that was kind of the middle class getting squeezed more and more by NIL. How good of a job is the Stanford head coaching job? Scale it for me from 1 to 10 in the comments section of today's show. Number 3, and this might be the job that Gary Patterson kind of comes out of his semi-retirement for. Patterson was the longtime TCU head coach. Now, I get he's done stuff with Texas briefly and Baylor as a consultant, but he has spent some time coaching out in California, way back when as a defensive coach. The end of his tenure in TCU wasn't that great. 3-5, 6-4, 5-7, 7-6. But this was one of the best coaches in college football for a very long time. You don't win 181 games in 22 years at TCU by being bad. You win it by being damn good. This might be the job to get him out of retirement. He's only 65 after all. Number 2, how about Pep Hamilton? This would be, look, I'm looking for Andrew Luck hires, right? You have a GM. Hamilton, of course, was at Stanford for many years as the OC, the receivers coach, was the Colts OC with Luck. Since then, it's kind of bounced around. Browns quarterback coach, Michigan passing game coordinator with Jim Harbaugh, UFL head coach, or USFL head coach, I guess. Chargers QB coach, Texans OC, took some time off. Now is the Maryland offensive coordinator. And again, trying to get someone to leave their job in, March for college is not the easiest thing, but I think he'd love the gig. I think he wants to be a head coach. Now, we will have more college football news for you, not just NFL stuff, but college stuff too, when it's appropriate. Hit that sub button if you haven't already, youtube.com/chatsportstv. Let's get a little bit weird at number 1, though. What if you just brought back David Shaw, even just as a temporary option? Now, I think it's a little bit less likely since he is now installed as the Lions passing game coordinator. But Shaw keeps interviewing for head coaching gigs. Like, all of it tells me he still wants to coach. The problem is the fall of Stanford began under Shaw's watch. 3-9, 3-9, the 4-2 COVID year, 4-8. At his best, David Shaw won 10 games every year at Stanford. He was a consistent 10-game winner. He and Jim Harbaugh helped make Stanford actually good at football. But it all fell apart kind of under him. But he knows Andrew Luck very well. Maybe with where both the coach and the program are at, as is with other teams, Bill Snyder, for example, at Kansas State, maybe a reunion starts to make a little bit more sense. But it is a unorthodox solution in the end.